Today we're going to be talking about the buyer's guide for the AMG GTS. And let me tell you, this car is incredible. So let's go ahead and start off with the stuff you need to know. Well, first off, you want to make sure that the recalls have been done. The axles for some of the first earlier years, they were recalled, they need to be completed. And you could go on CarFax and look at that. On my CarFax, I could see that they did that, so that's a good thing. But a couple of things you also want to make sure on this type of a vehicle with the M178 engine, the twin turbo V8 with the V hot side, turbos on top, is that the rear main seal is not leaking. That's a really important thing. And also that you don't have any coolant leaks. Believe it or not, the thermostats on these cars were a little finicky, and usually thermostats last a long time, but people buy these type of cars and they don't drive them, and what happens is essentially stuff just doesn't like to sit there. So you want to make sure that the car hasn't sat for like 3 or 4 years. That applies to any car, but especially high performance cars. On this particular vehicle, there was an issue just with the M178 engines when it came to the crank pressure, and that's why you want to make sure that you're checking that rear main seal. It has like catch cans in the front where essentially it relieves the pressure of the engine from the crank case pressure. If you're not familiar with it, essentially an engine builds pressure because there's some blow by through the pistons, and that pressure needs to be expelled through the positive crankcase ventilation, through the catch can systems, through a lot of different ways. So in this car, if one of them goes bad, you essentially have to fix that. Otherwise, you're going to be blowing seals like the rear main seal. So that was a couple things that this particular car, in general, the axles were fixed, the rear main seal was inspected, just to give you an idea. Like, that's a really important thing to look at. But besides that, some of the things you just want to make sure, if it came with the carbon ceramic package, on the actual rotor you're going to have circles, and those are going to be your wear indicator for your carbon ceramic rotors. You're going to want to look at the brake pads. If you're not familiar with this stuff, I really recommend a pre-purchase inspection at the dealership, because carbon ceramic brake packages are very expensive if you need to replace anything. But these brakes in general are supposed to last the life of the car pretty much, unless you're tracking. All right, a couple of things you also want to make sure is that the oil change and the regular maintenance has been done. And essentially the reason why you want to make sure that the maintenance has been done is because it's expensive, and some people might try to skip out on it, and that's going to impact the car, because long story short, these cars are high performance cars and you don't want to skip out on the maintenance. So how can you make sure that the car was maintained? Look at the CarFax, get any hard copy receipts or invoices from the previous owners, and just see if you could ask the dealer if there's any history, if it was a local car. Now, these cars are getting to be a decade old, so I can't believe that, because first off, this looks really good and it still looks almost new, but there's a couple of things that would catch you off guard if you're not familiar with cars, and that's going to be the PPF. And what I mean by PPF, that's the paint protection film. Usually that clear bra, is that's what people call it. It's the film that people put on high-end cars to protect the paint. A lot of people don't know that that has a shelf life. It has a life, and over time it yellows, it hardens, and it actually could have an adverse effect when you take it off. It actually peels some paint off. So the thing about it is that if you have cars with the original PPF and it wasn't taken care of very well, you could actually have an issue when you go to remove it. So you really want to make sure that you look at the edges of the car, you look at the PPF, just make sure nothing's peeling, nothing's yellowing, look at the corners. That's really going to help you and save you from a possible headache with the PPF. All right, besides that, I would say that this car sits really low, so inspect the front lip. My front lip has definitely some cracks, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that there isn't anything major going on with the carbon fiber. On this particular car, we got a carbon fiber wing, carbon fiber diffuser, the side skirt, so it's really important for you to inspect that. And something that goes with that is look underneath the car, and the reason why is that the jacking points on this car is some of the most retarded jacking points I've ever experienced in my whole life, because they're right next to these carbon fiber side skirts. So you just want to make sure that these side skirts have been crunched and that this car has actually been lifted correctly. So the most important thing when you're buying these cars used is that you definitely do want to have a history. And I really want to re-emphasize and circle back to that. Just make sure that they've been maintained, make sure that they've had good oil changes exactly in the times when they're supposed to have it, that the coolant has been flushed out, spark plugs have been replaced. Now this particular car has 50,000 miles and it's got a lot of consistent maintenance on a CarFax, and it's got a lot of consistent maintenance done by the owners, and it was very well taken care of. Another thing too is look at the Alcantara. If this vehicle has Alcantara, which mine has Alcantara all over it, just make sure that the parts that are utilized, that they're not overly worn and that there's not any major damage, because that's going to be very expensive to replace and it just doesn't look very good. All right, as far as driving goes, when you start the car, the steering wheel kind of moves and adjusts itself. You just want to make sure it does that correctly and doesn't do it weirdly. Another thing, the car starts in comfort mode, so don't get, you know, too crazy if it doesn't sound loud and you have all your buttons here. If you want to learn how to drive the car, we have a video and we show you how to actually get started and how to drive it. Because if you look over here, there's a lot of stuff going on. So we made a video explaining how all this works. So watch that once you buy your car, or if you're just curious ahead of time. But when you're test driving a car, the main thing you want to do is you just want to make sure that, you know, the e-brake works. That's a really important thing. And then that everything is pretty much smooth. I can tell you right away that when it's in automatic mode, it's very smooth. Like, you shouldn't feel any clunks or anything like that. It is like Mercedes smooth. Now, when you're in Sport Plus and race mode, it holds the shifts at a higher RPM, and it's a little bit more aggressive. It's designed to do that. But you should definitely be feeling some differences in the suspension when you go from comfort to soft to Sport Plus and race mode. And another thing too is if it has active exhaust mode, you definitely want to test that out. You want to press the button and you want to make sure you hear the exhaust change. That's really important. But besides that, just do your usual checks. You know, look at the air conditioner, make sure it runs, you know, mess with the radio and the music to hear the speakers and everything. And then really the car should just handle extremely well. And these are stiff cars. On comfort mode, it's not that bad. I have brand new tires and that made a big difference. I had older tires. But on Sport Plus and race mode, it is very stiff. So don't, you know, if you feel like, wow, that's super stiff, that's just the car. But besides that, enjoy it. It's an absolute fantastic car. Well guys, I hope you learned a little bit about the AMG GTS. I'm always open to learn from some of you guys who have a little bit more knowledge. So put that information in the comments so people who are watching this video can learn from you as well. Thank you for watching. Please follow us on Instagram at Drivers Therapy. Hit the like page, subscribe, and thank you for watching.